Ethan Reddick had always believed that silence was never truly silent. Even when a room was quiet, he felt there were hidden sounds, memories, fears, or small breaths carried by the air. On Vega 9 Research Outpost, people said nights were peaceful. They said the metal corridors slept like a tired beast, that nothing moved, nothing whispered, nothing changed after midnight. But Ethan knew from the first day that something was wrong with this place. Something lived inside the silence, something alive, something hurting. He walked the eastern hallway every night after his shift. It became a habit. His boots tapped lightly against the floor, and the dim blue lights flickered overhead like dying stars. Most workers rushed back to their rooms after hours, but Ethan preferred wandering. He said it calmed his nerves. But deep inside, he walked because he felt something calling. The first night he heard the sound, he froze. It wasn't the creaking of metal or the rumble of distant machines. It was small, soft, fragile, a trembling sob like someone trying to cry without being heard. Ethan stopped in the middle of the hallway, his heart tightening in his chest. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. Maybe he was tired. Maybe Vega 9 played tricks on him. But then he heard it again, faint, muffled, and full of pain. A child's whimper. He looked around, but the hallway was empty. No doors were open. No shadows moved. Only a cold breeze slipped through the vents, carrying that broken voice. Someone's crying, Ethan whispered to himself. He followed the sound, step by step, down the long metal passage. The lights grew darker, the walls colder. The crying became clearer, like it was pushing its way through steel and secrecy. Ethan's heart beat faster, not with fear, but with something else: concern, anger, and a strange sense of responsibility. Finally, he reached a door. It was large, heavy, and marked with bold red letters. Classified area, do not enter. Most people would have turned around. Most people would have told themselves that the sound was nothing, that it was the wind or the machines. But Ethan wasn't like most people. He had been a field medic during the lunar riots. He had carried bleeding children in his arms. He knew the difference between a mechanical sound and a living cry. Pain had a texture, a shape, a heartbeat. And this cry was full of fear, loneliness, and the weight of captivity. Ethan stepped closer, placing his ear against the cold metal. The sobbing was right behind it now, like a small creature curled up in the dark, shaking. "Hey," he whispered softly, unsure if the voice inside could hear. "Who's in there?" The crying stopped instantly. For a moment, there was only silence, thick, heavy, frightened. Then very faintly, a soft breath trembled from the other side. A sound so delicate that Ethan felt it in his bones. Someone was listening. He pressed his palm against the door and spoke again, gentle like he was comforting a scared patient. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The lights above flickered. The air vibrated slightly, almost like the person inside was reacting, trying to understand his voice. Ethan knew he couldn't open the door. He had no clearance. Breaking it would be considered treason. But he couldn't leave either. Not after hearing that sound. Not after knowing someone was suffering alone while the entire base pretended everything was normal. He sat on the floor beside the door, leaning his back against the wall. The cold metal pressed into his shoulders, but he didn't move. "If you can hear me," he whispered, "I just want you to know you're not alone. Someone's here." For a long time, nothing happened. Ethan closed his eyes, listening to the faint hum of the outpost. Then, through the metal, he heard a tiny sound, a small, careful sniffle. Like the person inside was trying to answer him, even without words. His chest tightened. Who was being kept in there? Why were they crying? And why was everyone else pretending it didn't exist? Ethan exhaled slowly. He didn't know the answers, but he knew one thing with complete certainty. He would come back tomorrow night, and the night after, and the night after that, because someone was trapped behind that door. Someone forgotten, someone hurting. Only one human only, Ethan, had ever responded to her cries the next night. Ethan could not stop thinking about the cry he had heard. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear it again, a small trembling sound that haunted him. He had walked the halls before, pretending nothing had happened, but his heart had refused to rest. Something was trapped behind that classified door, something human, or at least human in need. And he had promised himself silently that he would try to find it. Ethan had never broken protocol before. He knew the consequences. A security breach in a restricted area could mean termination, or worse. But that sound, it was unbearable. He walked slowly to the eastern wing, carrying nothing but a small flashlight, careful not to alert the night guards. When he reached the heavy steel door, his hand trembled as he swiped the clearance card he had borrowed earlier, praying it would work. To his relief, the lock clicked open. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a weak fluorescent strip along the ceiling. Ethan stepped in quietly, trying not to make a sound. And then he saw her. Curled on the cold metal floor, behind a thick reinforced glass wall, was a small alien girl. Her skin shimmered faintly blue, almost like moonlight on water, and her large eyes were wide with fear. Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. He had seen injured humans, wounded soldiers, scared children, but something about this being tugged at him differently. She was alone, trapped, and terrified. When she noticed him, her body shook. Her hands pulled her knees closer, and she made a soft whimper. Ethan raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. His voice echoed slightly in the sterile room. "I'm Ethan. I heard you crying last night." The girl blinked at him, her luminous eyes reflecting both confusion and fear. No words came from her mouth, only soft, trembling breaths. Yet Ethan understood. Pain was universal. Fear was universal. Loneliness. Perhaps that was the most universal of all. Ethan studied the small figure. She could barely be a teenager, he guessed. Her body was frail, her movements hesitant. Something told him she had not seen care, kindness, or comfort in a very long time. Her cell seemed sterile and cold, designed to control and suppress, not to help. For a moment, neither of them moved. He wanted to reach through the glass, but he knew he could not. That barrier separated them physically, yet Ethan felt connected to her in a strange, immediate way. He sat on the floor just outside the glass, careful to stay low, non-threatening. "I know you're scared," he whispered. "I won't leave. I'll come back. I promise." The girl tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. Then, almost imperceptibly, she reached out her small hand, placing it against the glass where his hand hovered outside. Ethan pressed his palm gently to match hers. It was a simple gesture, but it carried weight, a connection, a bridge of trust forming between them. Over the next few nights, Ethan returned. Sometimes he brought food he had borrowed from the supply room, small comforts meant to remind her of something warm and human. Other times he brought light from a small hollow projector, stars dancing across the walls so she could see the sky she had been denied. Each time, she allowed herself to uncurl a little more, to trust him a little more. One night, Ethan leaned closer, reading a small data screen he had accessed from the restricted files. Her name was Lyrian. Captured during a skirmish on a distant planet, classified as dangerous, her existence had been hidden away. But Ethan looked at her now and saw no danger, only a frightened child, a soul alone in a harsh, uncaring place. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes meeting his. In that moment, no words were needed. Ethan understood. He had responded to her cries. He had crossed the line where others had turned away. And in her eyes he saw something blooming, a fragile hope, a recognition that she was not forgotten. Ethan whispered, almost to himself, "I'll help you. Somehow, I'll get you out of here." Lyrian blinked. Just once, and pressed her hand harder against the glass. A small smile, fleeting but real, appeared on her face. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she allowed herself to feel that someone could care. And Ethan, feeling the weight of that trust, knew this was just the beginning. Someone had to fight for her. Someone had to hear her cry when the rest of the world ignored it. He left the room that night with his heart heavy but determined. Somewhere deep inside he realized only one human had ever responded to her cries. And that one human had just begun to fight. Ethan returned to the chamber night after night. Every time, the metallic corridor seemed colder, darker, but he carried a small warmth inside him, a spark of hope that this girl, this fragile creature, could survive if someone just reached for her. He never rushed. He never demanded anything. He only came, and he listened. That was enough for now. Lyrian had begun to change. She no longer hid completely in the corner of her glass cell. She would lift her glowing eyes to him when he entered, tilt her head, and sometimes, just sometimes, she would raise her hand to the glass, meeting his palm with hers. Words were not possible. She had no language that he could understand, and he had none that she could hear. But gestures, small smiles, and the quiet patience of presence were universal. One night, the room felt heavier than usual. The outpost machinery hummed in its normal rhythm, yet Ethan sensed something different, a sharp tension in the air, a silent warning. He crouched beside the glass and whispered, It's okay. I'm here. I'm not leaving. Lyrian hesitated, then slowly stepped forward, placing both hands on the cold surface. Ethan matched her motion. The glow from her skin pulsed gently under his touch. He could feel her fear, her loneliness, and the faintest trace of trust threading through it all. She did something new that night. She pointed at herself and then at him, her hands trembling. Ethan frowned, unsure what she meant. Then she tapped the glass twice, pointed toward the door, and looked at him pleadingly. Her meaning was clear. She wanted to leave. She wanted freedom. Ethan's heart thumped in his chest. The idea of breaking the rules, of risking everything, weighed heavily on him. If he were caught, he would be punished. Maybe even jailed. But looking at her, curled up and glowing faintly in the darkness, he felt a sharp, undeniable certainty. He could not leave her here. "I'll get you out," he whispered, almost to himself. "I promise. Somehow I'll find a way." From that night, their bond deepened. Ethan brought her small comforts, warm blankets, stolen rations, even tiny lights to remind her of the stars she could no longer see. She began to trust him more with every visit. Sometimes she would hum a soft sound, a low vibration that seemed like an alien lullaby. Ethan would sit quietly, letting it fill the room, feeling something in his chest loosen. He learned about her in fragments. Her file said Lyrian was dangerous, but he knew better. Danger lay in the hands of those who kept her here, not in her small trembling body. She had been taken during a planetary raid, separated from everyone she knew, locked in this sterile cage, and ignored. She was not dangerous, she was terrified. And she had cried out into the void, and only he had answered. One night, Ethan lingered longer than usual. The hum of the bass faded into the background. He whispered, "I won't let them hurt you. You're not alone anymore. You have me now." Lyrian pressed her glowing hand to the glass, and Ethan pressed his palm against hers. The warmth of her skin, the pulse of her life, struck him in a way he had never felt before. In that moment, everything else, rules, consequences, the world outside, disappeared. It was only him and her. Two beings from different worlds, connected by trust, by courage, by the faint hope that one day, she could be free. Ethan began making plans. He studied the security routines during the day, watched the guard rotations, and memorized the maintenance tunnels he had been told never to enter. Every night he would return to Lyrian, sharing nothing of the plan but giving her small joys, a piece of food, a new star pattern from his hollow projector, a gentle word. Each gesture built the fragile bridge between them stronger. The bond they formed was quiet, but powerful. It was a bond built from presence, from kindness, from the willingness to answer a cry that no one else had heard. Lyrian's trust grew. She started to smile at him, faint and fleeting, but real. And each time she did, Ethan felt something shift inside himself, a sense of purpose, of responsibility, of something more human than he had ever known. One night, she pressed her hand to the glass and held it there longer than usual, her eyes shining with a strange light. It was as if she was telling him, "I believe you. I will follow you." Ethan whispered back, a soft vow only for her ears. "I won't let you down. I will get you out. I will not fail you." And in that dark, lonely room, under flickering fluorescent lights and the weight of the cold metal walls, a silent promise was made. A human and an alien, separated by glass and by worlds, had begun a journey together, a journey that would demand courage, defiance, and the kind of hope that could not be extinguished after the first time. Lyrian allowed herself to imagine freedom. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to imagine that hope could win, and both of them, in their quiet, fragile way, knew that their bond was the beginning of something greater, something worth fighting for. The days after their silent bond formed, Ethan became more careful, more deliberate. Every step he took through the outpost, every glance at the guards, every swipe of his ID card, was calculated. He couldn't afford mistakes, not when Lyrian's life depended on him. She had begun to trust him completely, and he could not betray that trust. The thought of leaving her in that cold, lonely cell made his chest ache. Ethan studied the security schedules, memorized camera locations, and traced the maintenance tunnels no one ever walked. He knew that if he planned carefully, there might be a chance, just a small one, to get her out. Each night, he returned to her cell, carrying small tokens, stolen rations, blankets, tiny lights for her to see the stars she had been denied. Lyrian would smile faintly when he came. She would extend her hand, glowing softly in the dim light, and press it against his. These small gestures reminded him of why he risked everything. One night, After hours of studying the security logs, Ethan crouched beside the glass and whispered, "I think I can get you out. There's a tunnel that leads to the landing bay. If we time it right, we can make it to an old shuttle. Just follow me and don't be afraid." Lyrian tilted her head, glowing faintly, as if understanding. She pressed her hand against the glass in agreement. It was the closest she could come to saying, "I trust you." That trust strengthened Ethan's resolve. Over the next week, he prepared. He mapped the guards' patrols, memorized the exact timing of each camera rotation, and located the shuttle that could still operate. Every night, he rehearsed in his mind the path he would take, the obstacles they might face, and the way he would guide her. He knew it was dangerous. One mistake could mean capture or worse. But leaving her here was no longer an option. Finally, the night came. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he approached her cell. Lyrian was already awake, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled close. The dim light of her skin shimmered softly, and for a moment, Ethan paused to watch her. She was small, vulnerable, yet somehow stronger than anyone he had ever met. He knelt beside the glass and whispered, "Tonight we leave. You're ready?" She nodded slowly, her glowing eyes meeting his. A faint smile curved her lips. Ethan could feel the weight of her hope pressing on his heart. He felt it too, the need to fight for someone who could not fight for herself. He disabled the cameras with careful precision, timing the override for exactly 40 seconds. He swiped his card and heard the lock click. The door hissed open. Ethan extended his hand toward her. Lyrian hesitated for only a second before stepping forward. Her fingers brushed his as they moved together through the corridor. For the first time, she was not alone. She felt his courage, and he felt her fragile trust. The alarm screamed moments later. Someone had discovered the breach. Ethan did not look back. He grabbed Lyrian's hand and pulled her into the maintenance tunnel. The air was cold and narrow, but it hid them from the guards. Heavy boots echoed from behind as soldiers shouted, but Ethan's grip on her hand never faltered. "Stay close. Don't stop," he whispered. The tunnel twisted and turned. Sparks flickered from exposed wiring. Lyrian's small hand trembled in his, but she kept pace. Ethan whispered words of encouragement, and she listened, eyes shining with a combination of fear and determination. They were two strangers from different worlds, yet in that moment, they moved as one. Finally, they reached the landing bay. Ethan's eyes scanned the area. The shuttle they had planned for was still there, battered but functional. His heart surged with hope. They were almost free. Then a figure stepped from the shadows, the base commander, flanked by soldiers. "Ethan! Step away from the prisoner!" The commander shouted. Ethan stood firm, placing himself between Lyrian and the approaching threat. "She is not a prisoner. She is a child," he shouted back. His voice carried the weight of all the nights he had spent watching her cry, all the promises he had made. Lyrian clutched his hand tightly. Her glow pulsed brighter, as if feeding off his courage. Ethan could feel it. She trusted him completely, and that trust gave him strength. The soldiers hesitated, unsure what to do. Ethan didn't give them a choice. He pulled Lyrian toward the shuttle. She followed without question, her small steps echoing against the metal floor. The engines roared as he prepared for takeoff. For the first time, Lyrian was leaving the cell that had held her for so long. For the first time, she saw the outside world with hope, not fear. And Ethan, guiding her to freedom, felt something swell inside him, a sense of humanity's courage, of compassion in the face of danger. They were not yet safe, but for the first time, escape was possible. And both of them, bound by trust and hope, knew that together they could face whatever came next. The shuttle doors closed with a hiss, sealing Ethan and Lyrian inside. The engines roared to life, shaking the metal deck beneath their feet. Ethan gripped the controls, glancing at the star-filled sky beyond the bay. Freedom was close, yet danger had not vanished. The alarms from the base still screamed, warning anyone who would listen that two fugitives were escaping. Lyrian stood beside him, small and glowing, her hands gripping the edge of the control panel. Her eyes, wide and bright, reflected both fear and wonder. She had never seen so much of the outside world. The vastness of space stretched before her like an endless sea of stars, and for the first time, she realized she could move, breathe, and... "Are you okay?" Ethan asked softly, glancing at her. She nodded, though her trembling hands betrayed her nerves. Ethan understood. Fear lingered even in the first moments of hope. He placed a reassuring hand on hers, feeling the warmth of her alien skin. A silent pulse passed between them, a bond forged in danger and trust. Behind them, the base commander's squad was already mobilizing. The sound of pursuit echoed in Ethan's mind. He had known it would come. The moment they took her, someone would chase them. Every decision he made, every path he chose, had to account for this. There was no room for error. Ethan activated the shuttle's thrusters, sending the craft into a sharp ascent. Sparks from the engines lit the small cabin as the shuttle groaned under the sudden speed. Lyrian stumbled but held onto him, her glow brightening in alarm and energy. Ethan whispered, "Hold on. We're almost through." The base's automated defenses tracked their movement. Missiles streaked past, illuminating the sky in red streaks. Ethan swerved, narrowly avoiding impact. Lyrian gasped, clutching the console for support. Her energy flared, reacting to the danger, but she did not panic. She trusted him. He muttered under his breath, focusing entirely on maneuvering through the chaos. Every nerve in his body was alert. Every calculation mattered. If he failed, Lyrian would be returned to that cold cell, and he could never forgive himself. He had promised her freedom, and he would keep it, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a blast rocked the shuttle. The cabin shuddered violently, and alarms blared. Ethan gritted his teeth, stabilizing the craft. "Stay close. Don't let go," he shouted. Lyrian pressed against him instinctively, and for a moment, they were two beings in a tiny metal vessel, facing the universe together. Ethan's mind raced. He needed a path, a tunnel through space debris and automated fire that would take them out of range of pursuit. He remembered the old asteroid belt near Vega 9, a dangerous but effective hiding place. It would be tight, risky, and unforgiving, but it offered a chance. He aimed the shuttle, hearts pounding in synchrony, his and Lyrian's. The shuttle slipped through the asteroid belt like a silver fish navigating jagged rocks. Sparks flew as small debris scraped against the hull, but Ethan kept the course steady. Lyrian's glow pulsed faster, reflecting the tension in the cabin. She whispered something in her strange, soft alien language. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was encouraging him, urging him forward, placing faith in his hands and decisions. Minutes felt like hours. Each movement of the shuttle was a dance with death. Ethan dodged automated turrets, evaded tracking drones, and guided them deeper into the asteroid's shadow. Behind them, the base's alarms faded, lost in the chaotic field of rocks and silence. Freedom was closer, but not yet guaranteed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the shuttle emerged on the far side of the belt. Ethan exhaled deeply, leaning back against the seat. Lyrian's hand squeezed his in relief. Her glow softened, her eyes shining with the first light of true hope. "We made it," Ethan whispered. Voice thick with exhaustion and emotion. Lyrian tilted her head, then rested it briefly against his shoulder. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility lift just a little, replaced by a fragile, thrilling sense of victory. They were not safe, but they were together, and that was enough for now. In that moment, Ethan realized something profound. It wasn't just courage or skill that had brought them this far, it was trust. Trust between two beings from entirely different worlds, trust built in a dark cell and strengthened by shared danger. And it was that trust that had given them a chance at freedom, against every odds, against every rule. Against the cruelty of those who had imprisoned Lyrian. Ethan's gaze met Lyrian's. "We'll find a safe place," he promised. "Somewhere you can be free." She nodded, a small, genuine smile spreading across her face. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt hope, not as a dream, but as a reality. The shuttle drifted deeper into the quiet of space, engines humming softly. They had escaped the immediate threat, but the journey was far from over. Yet, together, Ethan and Lyrian knew that no darkness, no barrier, and no pursuit could break the bond they had formed. For the first time, Lyrian was free in body and spirit. For the first time, Ethan understood the true power of responding to a cry when no one else would. And both of them, drifting among the stars, felt the fragile but unstoppable force of hope. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he guided the shuttle through the last stretch of the asteroid belt. Every movement was tense, every decision critical. Behind him, Lyrian clutched the edge of the control panel, her small body glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. She had never been outside her cell before, and the endless expanse of space was overwhelming. Yet she remained calm in the way only someone who had been forced to endure unbearable fear could. Careful, attentive, and strangely brave. Suddenly, the shuttle jolted violently. A blast from a pursuing turret struck the hull. Sparks flew, and the cabin shuddered under the impact. Ethan gritted his teeth, trying to steady the controls, but the shuttle had been damaged. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Lyrian cried out, a soft, frightened sound that pierced Ethan's heart like a blade. "Hold on," he shouted, glancing at her. She nodded, her small hand pressing against his. That gesture, so fragile, so trusting, made him furious. Whoever had trapped her, whoever had chased them, had no idea what they had done. They had awakened a determination in Ethan that burned hotter than any fear. A second blast hit closer this time. Ethan's side slammed against the seat edge. Pain flared sharply. He staggered, but he couldn't fall, not now. Not when Lyrian was depending on him. His vision blurred slightly, and his breathing came in short gasps. He pressed his hand to his side, trying to ignore the blood that was starting to seep through his uniform. "Ethan!" Lyrian gasped. Her voice was filled with alarm. Her glow intensified, pulsing faster as if sensing the danger more acutely than he did. "I'm fine," he managed, forcing a strained smile. "Just a scratch. Keep your hands on the console. We're almost through." Another blast struck, closer this time. Ethan stumbled, and the pain shot through his body like fire. He fell to one knee. Lyrian's cry echoed through the cabin. He saw fear flash in her eyes, a reflection of all the suffering she had endured in captivity. And in that moment, Ethan realized something profound. It wasn't just him protecting her, it was them protecting each other. Desperate, he felt Lyrian's small hands on his arm. Her glow radiated warmth. She pressed her palms to the wound in his side, an instinctive, impossible act. Ethan gasped. Energy surged from her, soft at first, then stronger, flowing into him. The pain in his side eased, replaced by warmth and strength. "Lyrian?" he whispered, disbelief in his voice. Her large, glowing eyes met his. No words were needed. She had given him life, saved him in the way only someone pure of heart could. Ethan felt tears prick the corners of his eyes, not from pain, but from awe and gratitude. This small, fragile being had risked herself to save him, the human who had come for her when no one else would. The pursuing ships hesitated, unsure what they were seeing. Ethan could see their confusion reflected in the shuttle's monitors. Lyrian's glow pulsed brighter, but she did not harm anyone. She simply protected the human who had believed in her, who had answered her cries when no one else had. Ethan steadied himself and rose to his feet with Lyrian's support. "Thank you," he whispered. "I promise. We'll be free." The shuttle shook as they approached a safe zone, beyond the asteroid field, beyond the reach of the outpost's weapons. Ethan's hands moved expertly across the controls, guided by adrenaline, fear, and determination. Behind them, the last automated turrets fired, but they were too late. Ethan had calculated the path perfectly. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of the shuttle. Lyrian's glow softened. She pressed her hand against his, a silent connection that said more than words ever could. Ethan's breath finally returned to normal. The pain in his side had faded, and he realized that he owed his life entirely to her. In that quiet moment, Ethan understood something that no battle or drill had ever taught him. Courage was not just human, nor was it physical. Courage was love. Courage was compassion. Courage was answering the cry that no one else heard. And when he had done that, when he had chosen to risk everything for Lyrian, he had not only saved her, he had proven the strength of humanity itself. Ethan exhaled, leaning back in the seat. Lyrian rested her head on his shoulder, exhausted but alive. Together, they looked out at the stars, toward the freedom that awaited them. He whispered softly, "We're almost there. You'll be safe." She nodded, glowing faintly in response. Her eyes held a trust that no one else had earned. And Ethan knew that he would protect that trust with everything he had. For the first time in months, perhaps years, both of them allowed themselves to feel hope. For the first time, Ethan realized that answering a cry in the dark could change not just one life, but two and maybe even the world. And together, drifting among the stars. They knew the fight was not over, but for now they had won.